Hey, this is Max from UNFTR for the Midas Touch Network. When I put together last week's macro take, it was before the late day release of some pretty eye-opening data that came out on Friday. So I tucked it away for this week, but then another piece of information came out that when you put them together is pretty alarming. So the headline here is that the consumer economy is getting crushed, but there are so many other stories that are masking this underlying weakness that I wanted to split it out to give it a proper reading. So I'm going to go through this information first to set the table, and then show how the consumer is really being sacrificed at the altar of inequality. Well, you probably heard or saw the news a couple of weeks ago that Senator Elizabeth Warren and Donald Trump had a bit of a détente around the idea of capping credit card rates.
President Trump reached out to Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren for a conversation that the White House called productive.
So the question then is, he raises the point about a cap on credit card interest rates, something that had come up in this speech and that I've been working on for years, and that is trying to get interest rates down. And he said he wanted to work on that. And I said, great.
It's highly unlikely that this kumbaya moment will actually materialize, but it's worth walking through what this would actually look like. So, and we'll get there in a bit, but we should start with the problem statement, because the big takeaway here is that these polar opposite politicians were aligned on this single issue, if even for a moment. Now, there's good reason for it, as we can see in the data. I always start with the caveat that it's important not to get lost in a single month data release. What's important is to look at the overall trend. Now, having said that, it's rare to see a single month explosion like this, even in a holiday month like December. The total consumer indebtedness figure grew to $5.1 trillion at the end of the year. That represents modest growth over the year, which is why you didn't hear analysts going crazy about it when it came out. But the reason it increased at all was due to the staggering single-month growth in revolving credit, i.e. credit cards, as you can see in the circled figures. A 12.5% change month over month, and that pushed the total revolving credit year-over-year increase to 3.4%, which is higher than it had been throughout the entire year. So this figure is exclusive of mortgages, which we'll get to in a moment. So outside of credit cards, things like auto loans, student debt, and other installment loans also increased by 3.2% in December. Now, there were competing takes on why things surged in December that I found at odds. One prevailing take was that when you pair this with holiday spending and smooth it over November and December, it showed that holiday spending increased slightly. So obviously the administration pounced on that as a sign of a healthy consumer. But some looked at the